Carl Froch thinks Anthony Joshua is past his best on the slide and has no real legacy. He won't end up in the Hall of Fame. Well, before I quote Carl Froch, I do have to take exception to this idea that he won't be in the Hall of Fame, only for the fact that there are fighters in the Hall of Fame already who haven't achieved as much as Anthony Joshua. The bar isn't particularly high when it comes to getting into the Hall of Fame, or at least it isn't in some years. But if you're talking about where Anthony Joshua stands right now in terms of his resume and his legacy next to the great heavyweights of the past, then I would agree he has not done anything to deserve being mentioned in the same sentence as them. But that's different to being inducted into the International Hall of Fame, where, as I say, the bar is not particularly high from what I've seen in the past. But in terms of all-time great status, because not all greats are equally great, not all champions are great at all. AJ, for my money, hasn't achieved greatness to date. Anyway, let's get on to what Carl Froch said. He said, Joshua doesn't need to retire, but I would say that AJ is past his best and on the slide. I don't know where his motivation is now. It can't be money. He says it is, but he's made a fortune. So when you've earned so much, how much do you need? That's one of the reasons I retired, because I'd earned enough money and I thought, I've got everything I want, so why am I going to get punched in the head and risk getting injured? I've got kids, and there's risk and reward. AJ has had a fantastic career financially, but maybe it niggles him that he's probably got no real legacy. He's not in the Hall of Fame, unlike the Cobra. Not to have a dig at him, but you have to look at yourself as a fighter and ask, why am I in the game? Am I in the game to make a fortune? Of course I am, if I can do it and be one of the lucky ones. One of the few who get out of the game financially free with their health intact. And he's done that. But he's not going to go down as an all-time great with the fights he's had, losing to Ruiz and back-to-back fights with Usyk. What does he want? What's he fighting for? He said money, but money is not motivation when you're fighting, trust me. You don't think about money when you walk into that ring. If you do, it's a bad attitude and you don't perform. You perform from wanting to be world champion and wanting to perform for yourself and fans to get a legacy, to be a Hall of Famer. You have to be in love with the sport. Okay, those are the words of Carl Froch. And this kind of echoes what Johnny Nelson said a few weeks ago with regards to Anthony Joshua. Why is he still in the game? And these are fighters, they understand all about what motivates people to fight and continue fighting. They look at the Jermaine Franklin performance and they say, that's not a guy who looks like he's in love with boxing. Where's the passion? Where's the fire? That's basically what Johnny Nelson said, and Carl Froch is saying something similar, or that's my interpretation of what he's saying. We've also seen Anthony Joshua come out even after the Jermaine Franklin fight and say that he's not a fighter, he's a boxer. That doesn't fill you with confidence. The very thing he needed against Alexander Usyk was that fighting spirit, was to dispense with the boxing and take Alexander Usyk into the trenches. And he failed to do that twice. He then goes in against Jermaine Franklin, boxes to a 12-round decision, never hurts the guy in any noticeable way, never really tries to get him out of there. And after the fight, he's saying, well, you see, I'm a boxer, I'm not a fighter. In order for people to believe in Anthony Joshua again, they want to see the same type of fighting spirit that he demonstrated years ago against Dylan White. They want to see the same type of fighting spirit that he demonstrated against Klitschko. Where's it gone? Boxing is a very dangerous sport, we know this. And occasionally, people will ask fighters whether they think about the potential dangers when they're going into a fight, risking serious injury and so on. And most of the top fighters say, absolutely not. They don't think about it. They say that if you were to start thinking about that, you would hesitate in the ring. You'd second guess yourself on what you're doing. You'd lose confidence when you start thinking about all the potential dangers. You can't allow those thoughts to enter your mind. But is that exactly what has happened to Anthony Joshua? Has he allowed those thoughts to enter his mind? Several years ago, when Anthony Joshua was still unbeaten, he met up with Floyd Mayweather a few times. And after that, he boxed Joseph Parker, and that was the first time we'd seen Anthony Joshua put on a safety-first performance. We heard him talk about wanting to have longevity in the sport, preserve his health, and so on. Yeah, Mayweather, as a welterweight at least, was a safety-first fighter, but he was never scared in the ring. If the boxing weren't working, Mayweather could take it to a guy and get the job done. That's what he did against Zab Judah. Judah was outboxing Mayweather for the first few rounds. Dropped him. It wasn't officially called, but he dropped him. Mayweather took the fight to him, imposed himself on Zab Judah, made it physical. Not an out-and-out brawl, but he imposed himself on the guy. And that's what got the job done. Anthony Joshua wasn't able to do that against Alexander Usyk. He was apparently too afraid to do it. And that's not going to cut it at the highest level. That's not going to cut it against someone like a Deontay Wilder, in my estimation. But here's one thing I will say with regards to AJ's motivation. Fighters are often motivated by criticism, particularly fighters who have been praised for a very long time. When they start receiving a lot of criticism, perhaps after a loss or a number of losses, sometimes it can completely destroy them. But other fighters get motivated by that. It makes them angry. It makes them determined to prove everyone wrong. Muhammad Ali's an example. He lost to Joe Frazier, lost to Ken Norton. He was in the wilderness for a while. Then he got the fight with George Foreman. The vast majority of people wrote him off, gave him no chance. Ali was motivated by the fact that nobody gave him a chance. And you saw that in the post-fight interview where Ali was screaming at the camera, screaming at his critics who doubted him. It's very theatrical and hilarious to me. I mean, Ali didn't think it was funny. He was venting all his frustration. He talked specifically about his critics in the Ring magazine and these various other publications who were writing him off against Foreman. He told them to bow to him after the fight. Again, in this rage, this rant. Now, of course, Anthony Joshua is no Muhammad Ali. Most fighters aren't anything like Muhammad Ali in terms of having that level of will. Ali had an extremely strong will. That's one thing that Mike Tyson often talks about. He gets teary-eyed talking about how strong Muhammad Ali's will was. So AJ is nothing like that. But Ali wasn't the only fighter who used criticism as motivation. Loads of fighters do it. Can Anthony Joshua do it? I've said in several videos about AJ over the past year or so that maybe AJ needs to be written off. Maybe he needs people to stop believing in him. Not just for motivation, but also because it takes the pressure off his shoulders. I think AJ's been struggling to deal with the pressure. And if he goes into a fight that nobody thinks he's going to win, where's the pressure? You got all these people like Lennox Lewis, Tyson Fury, Carl Froch, the majority of boxing fans saying that Wilder's going to knock him out and do it probably early. If that's all people are expecting, again, where's the pressure? This really is make or break for Anthony Joshua. This absolutely is a pivotal time in his career. If he actually beats Deontay Wilder, I suspect he probably will go on to regain at least a version of the heavyweight title and have several more years of success. I suspect that will happen if he beats Wilder, because when you're written off to this extent, when everybody doubts you and you go in there and prove the whole world wrong, it gives you a whole new lease of life. It gives you a whole new level of confidence. Think about it. Everyone doubts you. Everyone thinks you're going to get chinned, yet you go in there and win and prove them all wrong. You will then start trusting your own judgment more so than other people's judgment, because the majority of people were wrong about what was going to happen in that fight. I'm very interested to find out where the Anthony Joshua story goes from here. If he loses to Wilder, particularly if it's in devastating fashion and early, like Carl Froch suggests, then surely it's all over for him. And it's these things that make boxing compelling, at least for me, these make or break moments. I look at a guy like Anthony Joshua and I've always felt that he hasn't fulfilled his physical potential. But then again, you could say the same about Audley Harrison. He had a lot of physical ability, but he didn't have the right mind to become successful in professional boxing. And that's no minor thing. Having the right mindset is actually more important than having great physical ability. That's why there have been many fighters over the years who didn't have great physical ability, but because of their mindset, they still made it to the top. So sometimes we can get a bit too enamored with a fighter's physical potential. And before I go, I do want to acknowledge something that Johnny Nelson said many years ago. And in hindsight, people are going to say, well, that's not a particularly impressive prediction. But yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. Audley Harrison won Olympic gold at super heavyweight. He turned pro and got this big contract with the BBC. At that stage, there was no real reason for the public to doubt him. I don't think he'd had a fight yet. But Johnny Nelson was interviewed about Audley Harrison. And at that early stage, Johnny Nelson, right after Harrison had just turned pro, said, I don't think he's going to make it. As in, I don't think he's going to become a world champion. Johnny Nelson made that prediction right at the start of Harrison's career. He obviously knew certain things about him in the amateurs, and he knew certain things about his character and what have you that the public didn't know. And he was obviously bang on the money. But at the time, it was kind of a curious thing to say, because you look at Harrison and you're like, well, he won Olympic gold. He's 6'5", 6'6", long reach, good technique, got power there. Why is Johnny Nelson so sure that he's not going to make it? Again, he knew something that the public didn't know. The public, of course, would later on discover, but they didn't know at the time. And so now when he expresses his skepticism about Anthony Joshua's future, is he once again going to be proved to be bang on the money? You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.